all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis 8. Dogman, Loyalty, Sacrifice, and Protection, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Dogman, a field guide for men who still notice reality, the violence of competence, why your push-ups trigger the parasite class, how the feminist cult of entropy turned excellence into extraction, and why the horizontalist death spiral devours civilizations. We have reached a level of societal insanity where the simple act of a man tying his running shoes is now interpreted by the academic priesthood as an act of
patriarchal warfare. I read Dr. Winona's treatise on velociculture, not with anger, but with the grim amusement of a pathologist identifying a particularly aggressive fungus.
She argues that self-improvement is extraction, that discipline is violence, and that the pursuit of excellence is a gendered conspiracy. This is not sociology. It is the shrieking of the chaotic void against the terrifying order of the square. She invokes the specter of extraction to describe a woman voluntarily running a marathon. Hopping you are too stupid to notice that the only actual extraction happening is the tax revenue levied on the disposable male worker to fund the gender studies department where these logical fallacies are hatched. She frames the status of the modern woman as a perpetual moral patient, a passive victim of gravity and metabolism, while assigning duty and sanction exclusively to the nebulous system read men. It is a perfect closed loop of gamma bias. If a woman succeeds, it is despite the patriarchy. If she fails, it is because of it. This fiendish rhetoric depends wholly on the semantic inflation of the left, taking words like harvesting and forcing them onto the growth of one's own potential. Through what warped etymology does the Latin educere, to lead forth, become equal to strip mining? She mourns the burnout of graduate students as a disaster for civilization, yet says nothing about the 90% male makeup of workplace deaths, the quiet army of sewage workers, loggers,
and roofers whose extraction protocol involves trading their spines and lifespans. So Winona can type horizontalism on a MacBook. She offers horizontalism, a leveling of competence, as the fix for verticality.
This represents entropy pretending to be ethics. In the natural law of the West, we identify the great chain of being, the apprenticeship ladder, the trivium systems of vertical ascent that divide the citizen from the savage. To call for the end of habits is to call for the end of the competence needed to maintain life itself. It acts as a siren song for the weak, promising that if you merely quit trying, your failure will be painted as a political virtue. We are not being harvested, we are being asked to evolve, and for the left, that stands as the one sin they cannot forgive. You have just read the whining manifesto of Dr.
Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD, a woman who sees the architecture of civilization, the skyscrapers, the plumbing, the emergency rooms, the logistics networks, and screams that verticality constitutes violence.
She labels self-improvement velociculture, framing the building of one's own competence as a harvesting mechanism, as if making yourself stronger, faster, and sharper somehow steals from the collective. This displays the semantic inflation of a parasite arguing that the host's immune system represents a form of aggression. The left has attained peak insanity. They are now literally campaigning against gravity and biology under the guise of horizontalism. Let us dissect this violence claim with the cold steel of the trivium. The writer argues that the running body is an extraction site for capitalism, but what is actually being extracted? When a man wakes up at 4 a.m., his morning routine, which he mocks to haul gravel, pour concrete, and keep the lights on, is he being harvested? Or is he engaging in the noble, ancient transaction of transforming energy into order? The true extraction protocol isn't your morning jog, it's the gynocentric tax farm. While Dr.
Winona laments the female exploitability of graduate school, an environment of air-conditioned comfort and intellectual navel-gazing. Real men constitute 93% of workplace fatalities.
The empathy gap is so wide you could sail an aircraft carrier through it. When a man breaks his back in a mine, it's a statistic. When a woman feels stressed by her thesis advisor's tone, it's a human rights violation demanding a structural overhaul. This horizontalism she proposes is entropy masquerading as ethics. It is the crab bucket philosophy of the ideological zombie. She writes, "We need abolition of habits, which is a confession of her intent, the abolition of competence itself." She mocks the wellness industrial complex, while herself using the therapy speak of the academic industrial complex to demand immunity from reality. She is selling you the permission to rot. She wants to flatten hierarchies, by which she means she wants to sever the link between effort and reward. But reality is not a participation trophy ceremony, it is a battlefield. Violence of verticality, no. Verticality is the great chain of being. It is the arete of the West. It is the very ladder out of the mud that these ideologues are trying to burn down. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. The violence of verticality. Why your morning routine is a gendered extraction protocol. We don't need better habits. We need abolition. By Dr.
Winona feminist Marxist PhD. Let us speak the unspeakable. Your productivity is not neutral. Every January, the same ritual unfolds. Gym memberships surge, planners are purchased.
Running apps are downloaded with evangelical fervor. The language of self-improvement saturates every screen, every workplace, every academic institution, promising that if you simply optimize hard enough, grind thoroughly enough, rise early enough, you will become worthy of existence. But what if this entire apparatus is not liberation? What if it is velociculture, the systematic cultivation of speed, efficiency, and self-surveillance as mechanisms of gendered extraction? I coined this term deliberately. Velociculture describes how patriarchal capitalism has colonized the very concept of self-betterment, transforming it into a sophisticated harvesting system. And predictably, disproportionately, violently, it harvests from women, the running body as extraction site. Consider the modern cult of running. What is framed as personal health is actually the discipline of the feminine body toward capitalist utility. Women who run are celebrated not for the joy of movement, but for making themselves efficient, lean, contained. The marathon is not achievement. It is the internalization of productivity logic, so total that women will literally inflict cumulative joint damage to prove their compliance. The data bears this out. Women participate in organized running at rates exceeding men, yet sports medicine research remains overwhelmingly male-focused. Female pain is minimized. Female exhaustion is aestheticized. This is gamma bias functioning at full capacity. Women's suffering in pursuit of optimization is rendered invisible even as it is demanded. I think of Sarah, a doctoral candidate in sociology, who ran 6 miles daily at 5 a.m. because her department's culture valorized discipline. When stress fractures finally halted her, a male colleague suggested she listen to her body. He did not see the irony. Her body had been listening to him to the entire institutional structure that taught her worth equals output. Graduate school, the burnout factory. Higher education has perfected velociculture. Graduate programs, particularly in helping fields disproportionately populated by women, operate as extraction engines. The rhetoric of self-care functions as moral cover for structural abuse. Consider, 70% of psychology graduate students report clinically significant anxiety or depression. The numbers are comparable across social work, education, and the humanities, fields dominated by women. Yet institutions respond not with structural change, but with wellness workshops that locate the problem inside the exhausted student rather than inside the system producing exhaustion. This is the genius of velociculture. It transforms structural violence into personal failing. When a woman crashes in graduate school, the diagnosis is individual: poor self-care, time management issues, imposter syndrome, never institutional predation. The Q&A strategies employed in academic settings reveal the gendered architecture of this extraction. Women graduate students report being interrupted more frequently, having their contributions attributed to male colleagues, and receiving feedback focused on tone rather than substance. When they attempt to advocate for themselves, they are sanctioned as difficult. When they remain silent, they are erased. There is no correct move within a game designed for your defeat. The weaponization of therapy speak. Perhaps most insidiously, velociculture has colonized the very language women might use to name their oppression. Therapy speak, boundaries, self-care, healing has been weaponized against collective recognition. A woman suffering under the triple burden of wage labor, domestic labor, and emotional labor is told she needs better boundaries. The solution to structural exhaustion is reframed as individual psychological optimization. The question, "Why am I so tired?" is answered with, "Have you tried meditation?" rather than what is extracting from you. This is not accidental. The wellness industrial complex yoga studios selling enlightenment at 30 per class, meditation apps harvesting attention data, productivity gurus peddling morning routines is a multi-billion-dollar apparatus designed to individualize systemic problems. It is overwhelmingly marketed to and consumed by women. The message is clear: your exhaustion is your fault, and your remedy is your responsibility. Pay no attention to the structures demanding infinite output from bodies they refuse to support. The quiet crash. And so women crash. They crash quietly, diagnosing themselves with burnout, a term that individualizes what is actually collective injury. They crash believing they have failed optimization, rather than recognizing optimization itself as the violence. I have sat with countless women in my office, brilliant scholars and artists and organizers, who speak of their exhaustion as personal moral failing. They cannot see what I see: a system designed to extract maximum labor from female bodies while rendering that extraction invisible through the rhetoric of choice and improvement. The empathy gap is precise. When men struggle, institutions ask, "How can we support you?" When women struggle, institutions ask, "What is wrong with you?" Male disposability is real, but so is female exploitability, and the latter is rendered invisible by the cheerful language of empowerment. Toward horizontalism, the antidote to velociculture is not better velocity. It is refusal. We need what I call horizontalism, a deliberate flattening of the hierarchies that demand we prove our worth through endless productivity. Horizontalism means recognizing rest as a collective right, not an individual reward, refusing to locate structural problems in individual bodies, building communities of care that do not condition support on self-improvement, naming extraction when we see it. Even especially when it wears the mask of wellness, this will be called irresponsible. Critics will claim we are making excuses, refusing accountability, encouraging victimhood. This criticism itself is a weapon of velociculture, the demand that we continue participating in our own extraction. Let them criticize. The criticism proves the threat. A final question. When a system tells you that your exhaustion is a personal problem requiring personal solution, when it sells you books and apps and courses to fix what it has broken, what is actually happening? The answer is as simple as it is devastating. You are being harvested. The only solution is to stop growing for them. Velociculture ends when we refuse to run. The semantics of parasitism, deconstructing the velociculture narrative via the axis of propaganda. In 1597, Francis Bacon, father of the scientific method and Chancellor of England, wrote a diagnosis for mental maladies that remains surgically precise 4 centuries later. The human understanding, when it has once adopted an opinion, draws all things else to support and agree with it. Bacon labeled this a spider's web, a self-sealing trap, where the mind becomes both architect and prisoner.
upon reading Dr. Winona Feminist Marxist's treatise on velociculture, I witnessed Bacon's spider at work, spinning a cognitive web so perfectly self-referential that it qualifies as a closed-loop logic fraud.
The term itself, velociculture, functions as what the intelligence community calls a thought-terminating cliché, a verbal coat check where critical thinking is deposited at the door and never retrieved. By defining self-improvement, discipline, and productivity as symptoms of the very disease she claims to diagnose, she builds an ideological fortress immune to assault, your morning routine, evidence of brainwashing. Your gym membership, proof of patriarchal colonization. Your objection to her thesis, that's just your internalized extraction protocol talking. This is not dialectic, it is the semantic equivalent of a Mobius strip, a surface with only one side that endlessly returns to its own assumptions. The classical liberal arts tradition, specifically the trivium of logic, grammar, and rhetoric, was designed precisely to prevent this species of intellectual fraud. But the trivium requires what the left cannot abide, the possibility that one might be wrong. Consider the linguistic violence, the actual violentia from the Latin violare, meaning to treat with irreverence or infringe upon, committed against the English language in phrases like the violence of verticality. The Latin verticalis derives from vertex, meaning highest point or crown, cognate with vertere, to turn. Verticality, in the Western architectural and symbolic tradition, represents aspiration, transcendence, the upward reach of the human spirit toward the good, the true, and the beautiful, the transcendentals that the medieval scholastics recognized as the ultimate objects of human longing. Gothic cathedrals soared vertically, not to extract from worshippers, but to orient souls toward heaven. Aristotle's eudaimonia, flourishing through excellence, requires precisely the vertical ascent that our author pathologizes. When she redefines discipline and productivity as extraction and harvesting, she performs what logicians call semantic inflation, the deliberate expansion of a term's connotative field until it loses all descriptive precision. Violence once meant physical force causing harm. Now, in the newspeak of critical theory, it encompasses waking up early, going for a run, and completing your doctoral dissertation. This inflation serves a strategic purpose. By expanding the definition of harm to encompass any demand placed upon the human organism, the left creates an infinite reservoir of victimhood and an endless pretext for grievance. But words have histories, and those histories carry the accumulated wisdom of civilizations that built rather than complained. The harvesting metaphor warrants close inspection for its economic misunderstandings and psychological projection. In farming communities, the actual historical backdrop of reaping, growers sow seeds, nurture crops, and gather the excess created by their toil and nature's yield. The harvest generates worth, it does not pull it from a static pool. When a woman or a man, though the writer conveniently ignores half the species, finishes a race, earns a degree, or builds a business, she produces human capital, social capital, and often financial capital that never previously existed. This framing presumes a zero-sum ontology where one party's gain necessarily counts as another party's loss. This is the lump of labor fallacy that Adam Smith disproved in 1776, yet it stays the unexamined foundation of Marxist feminist thinking. More revealingly, the metaphor projects onto voluntary exchange the actual mechanics of the welfare state that the writer implicitly champions, who is really harvesting whom. When a male works 2,000 hours yearly to pay taxes that support women's studies programs, gender quotas, and the administrative bloat of diversity bureaucracies, we approach something closer to extraction. When family courts grant custody to mothers in 82.5% of cases, while requiring child support from fathers denied access to their children, this is extraction. When male suicide rates stand at 3.5 times female rates, yet the whole mental health industry focuses on women's emotional labor, we see not merely extraction but disposal. This asymmetric framing of status exposes the deep structure of feminist propaganda, women as permanent moral patients, men and abstractions as moral agents. Consider the claims. Women who run are celebrated, not for the joy of movement, but for making themselves efficient, lean, contained. Note the mind reading, the attribution of malignant motive to what might simply be a culture that values fitness. Note also the removal of agency. Women do not choose to run. The discipline of the feminine body is imposed upon them by patriarchal capitalism. This tracks precisely with what researchers call gamma bias, the simultaneous minimization of female agency and amplification of female suffering. When the doctoral candidate Sarah develops stress fractures from running 6 miles daily, the cause is not Sarah's choice, but the entire institutional structure that taught her worth equals output. Sarah cannot have simply made a poor decision. She must be a victim of a system. Contrast this with how our culture treats male suffering. When men work themselves into early graves, 93% of workplace fatalities are male. By the way, we call it providing for your family. When men die by suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women, we offer platitudes about reaching out while funding programs for women's mental health. The empathy gap yawns like a canyon. Female distress constitutes a moral emergency demanding systemic intervention. Male distress is either invisible or deserved. The author's evidentiary methods would fail a freshman logic course, yet they pass muster in the hallowed halls of contemporary grievance studies. I think of Sarah. She writes, "I have sat with countless women in my office." These are anecdotes, precisely the species of evidence that the prompt warns against, presented as data. This is standpoint epistemology, the doctrine that lived experience trumps statistical inference, that identity confers epistemic authority inaccessible to outsiders. But standpoint epistemology commits a category error. It confuses the phenomenology of experience with the ontology of fact. A woman's feeling of oppression is real as a feeling. It is not necessarily real as a description of external reality. The scholastics distinguished between ens rationalis, mental being, and ens real, real being. The left has collapsed this distinction, treating feelings as facts and dissent as violence. When the author claims that the data bears this out regarding women's running participation, she cites no actual data, no sample sizes, no confidence intervals, no peer-reviewed publications. She simply asserts, in the trivium, this is called argumentum ad verecundiam, appeal to authority, and it is a fallacy. But in the church of critical theory, the PhD behind the name and the identity behind the PhD constitute all the authority required. Perhaps the most revealing projection appears in the writer's assertion that patriarchal capitalism has colonized the very concept of self-betterment, transforming it into a sophisticated harvesting system. The verb colonize is borrowed here from post-colonial theory, where it describes the violent imposition of foreign rule upon unwilling subjects. But who is imposing what upon whom? In a free market, which is what capitalism actually denotes, despite the writer's conflations, individual exchange labor for wages, goods for currency, and time for education. These exchanges are voluntary. If they were not, they would not require the massive propaganda apparatus she employs to discourage them. The actual colonization, the genuine extraction, occurs through the state that her proposed horizontalism would expand. Taxes are not voluntary, they are collected under threat of imprisonment. Regulations are not suggestions. They are enforced by men with guns. When the state extracts 30 to 50% of a productive citizen's income to fund programs they never consented to support, we see extraction. When the writer advocates for rest as a collective right and communities of care, she means productive men shall be compelled to support unproductive women who refuse the extraction of self-improvement. The true parasite speaks loudest of exploitation. The section on academic Q&A strategies inadvertently reveals the impossibility of satisfying feminist demands, an observation that should be formalized as a law, the feminist imperative parallax. Women are interrupted more, the author claims, and also erased when silent. They are sanctioned as difficult when they advocate for themselves and ignored when they do not. There is no correct move within a game designed for your defeat. But consider, if there is no correct move, how would the author know what a correct move would look like? She has defined the problem in terms that make solution impossible, a classic self-sealing ideological maneuver. Moreover, The claim that women are uniquely interrupted in academic settings has been studied extensively with mixed results. A 2017 study in the American Political Science Review found that women interrupt more than men in Supreme Court arguments. A 2018 study in American Sociological Review found that men interrupt women more in some contexts, women interrupt men more in others, and the differences are often negligible. But the author does not cite these studies. She asserts a universal truth from selective perception. The deeper issue is this. The author demands that institutions perfectly intuit female needs without being granted the authority to set standards or enforce norms. This is responsibility without authority, the classic bind that feminist policy creates for every institution it touches. The weaponization of therapy speak, boundaries, self-care, burnout, represents perhaps the most insidious semantic capture in her arsenal. The term burnout entered psychological literature in 1974 through Herbert Freudenberger, who described it as a state of exhaustion caused by excessive demands on energy, strength, or resources. It was never intended to absolve individuals of responsibility for their choices, yet this is precisely how she deploys it. When a woman crashes in graduate school, the writer insists the diagnosis must be institutional predation, never poor self-care, or imposter syndrome. But consider the logical endpoint. If no individual ever bears responsibility for their psychological state, then no individual can ever improve it. This is the opposite of the Stoic tradition that built Western civilization. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." She proposes the precise inversion: you have no power over your mind. Outside events have all the power. This is not liberation, it is the most profound disempowerment imaginable, a philosophy of learned helplessness dressed in the language of resistance. When she claims that the wellness industrial complex individualizes systemic problems, she inverts causality. It is her ideology that externalizes individual problems, teaching women that every failure is society's fault and every success is impossible without systemic revolution. But here we encounter the fundamental asymmetry that the writer dare not name. Evolution's demands fall disproportionately upon the sex that builds, defends, and provisions. When this polemicist speaks of extraction and harvesting, she inverts reality with the precision of a Marxist street agitator. Projecting the very parasitism her ideology enacts onto the productive class she seeks to drain. The cultivation of competence is not violence against women. It is the prerequisite for the civilization that allows them the luxury of composing doctoral complaints about it. And so we must trace this inversion to its source. The deliberate erasure of male sacrifice through what the manosphere has identified as the four horsemen of the sexual apocalypse: empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority. The great chain of competence, why horizontalism is entropy masquerading as ethics. The ancient Greeks had a word for the condition Dr.
Winona describes with such breathless discovery: a pyros, the uninitiated, the unskilled, those without experience or competence.
When Socrates declared that the unexamined life is not worth living, he meant self-examination toward virtue, not self-obsession toward victimhood. What we witness in the violence of verticality is the cry of the incompetent demanding that competence itself be abolished because its existence constitutes an indictment of their character.
Winona has discovered that running requires effort, that graduate school demands work, that achievement presupposes standards, and like a toddler discovering gravity,
She has concluded that the universe is conspiring against her. The term velociculture is revealing in its etymological stupidity, from Latin velocitas, speed, and cultura, cultivation. She has coined a term for the cultivation of speed as if this were some ghastly invention of patriarchal capitalism, rather than, say, the entire history of biological evolution. Every organism that survives cultivates speed, efficiency, and self-regulation, or it becomes food for those that do. The graduate student Sarah is a pitiable figure, though not for the reasons this writer assumes. She has internalized a devastating message, that her worth derives from proximity to male modes of achievement. When the male colleague suggested she listen to her body, he was offering precisely the wisdom feminist theory claims to champion. Yet this critic twists the interaction into evidence of patriarchal conspiracy. This is the self-sealing immunity of ideological rhetoric in action. Any male response becomes evidence of male culpability. If he had said nothing, his silence would be violence. If he had praised her discipline, he would be extracting her labor. If he suggests rest, he is condescending. The logical structure is unfalsifiable, which is how you know it is not logic at all, but religion, specifically a religion of resentment where the unbeliever cannot utter any word that is not interpreted as blasphemy. The gamma bias in the essayist's framework operates with mechanical precision. Women's distress equals moral emergency requiring systemic intervention. Men's distress equals personal failing requiring individual correction. Let us speak of actual extraction protocols. In 2023, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, men comprised 91.1% of workplace fatalities. Not felt tired, died. The glass cellar that feminists meticulously ignore while wailing about glass ceilings contains the corpses of construction workers, loggers, fishermen, roofers, and trash collectors, overwhelmingly men who traded their safety for wages that supported families who will never adequately mourn them. Where is the empathy gap here? When a man is crushed by machinery, the response is workplace safety review, a procedural abstraction that locates the problem in protocols rather than persons. When a woman in a doctoral program feels exhausted, the response is a panicky cultural inquiry into the systemic forces that dare demand she read books and write papers. The male disposability embedded in our civilization is not a bug but a feature. Societies survive because men volunteer for disposability in exchange for status, resources, and the affection of women who not incidentally refuse to reproduce with men who cannot demonstrate competence through vertical achievement. Her call for horizontalism is entropy masquerading as ethics, death wearing the mask of compassion. Consider the logical structure. Premise A, survival requires the production of value, food, shelter, security, order. Premise B, production of value necessarily requires differential effort, discipline, skill, and time, what she terms verticality. Premise C, she advocates the abolition of verticality in favor of horizontalism, flattened hierarchies, rest as right, refusal of improvement. Conclusion. Horizontalism leads to the cessation of value production, which leads to societal collapse and death. This is not rhetoric, but thermodynamics. Every organism that ever lived has operated on vertical principles: grow, compete, adapt, improve, or perish. The great chain of being was not a conspiracy of oppression, but an observation of reality. Consciousness requires neural complexity, which requires biological sophistication, which requires evolutionary pressure, which requires differential survival. She is not proposing liberation, she is proposing that we stop being alive. The fundamental insult of this ideology is its absolute contempt for female agency. When a woman runs a marathon, the writer tells us she achieves nothing, she is being extracted from. When she excels in graduate school, she is not demonstrating brilliance, but is being harvested by patriarchal capitalism. When she builds a business, raises children, writes books, or lifts weights, the feminist theorist sweeps in to inform her that her achievements are actually oppression, her choices are victimization, and her competence is captivity. This reveals the conspiracy of lies around female nature. Women are recast as NPCs, non-player characters, in a game where only patriarchal structures possess true power. The red pill reality this writer cannot abide is that women do have agency, make choices, and bear responsibility for them. Some women choose to run because running feels good. Endogenous cannabinoids, dopamine regulation, improved cardiovascular health. Some choose demanding careers because achievement satisfies the human hunger for competence that evolutionary psychology has documented across every culture ever studied. This framework is not empowerment, but infantilization on an industrial scale. The phenomenon termed therapy-speak weaponization becomes clearer when viewed through the four horsemen of the masculine apocalypse. The empathy gap guarantees indifference to male suffering. Gamma bias amplifies female distress while minimizing male distress. Male disposability extracts utility while erasing humanity. And the asymmetry of responsibility without authority ensures men are blamed for unmanageable outcomes while women are absolved for freely made choices. When a man works himself into an early grave, average male life expectancy remains 5 years shorter than female. He is not provided wellness workshops or collective care or horizontalism. He receives nothing. His exhaustion receives no dignity from academic theorizing. His burnout is not diagnosed as systemic victimization. He is simply used up and replaced by the next disposable male, while feminist theorists write articles claiming the real victim is the woman in the doctoral program expected to read a book. The evolutionary irony of attacking running as patriarchal discipline would be funny if it were not so tragic. David Buss, an evolutionary psychologist, have documented that physical fitness correlates with mate value across cultures for both sexes. Human beings evolved as persistence hunters. We are literally designed by natural selection to run. The runner's high is not patriarchal extraction, but neurobiological reward for performing a behavior that enhanced survival and reproduction for millions of years. When the writer campaigns against running as patriarchal oppression, she is campaigning against female health, female longevity, and female agency, all in the name of liberation. The dense contradiction is characteristic. Every feminist prescription for female empowerment somehow makes women weaker, sadder, more anxious, and more dependent on feminist theorists to explain why their misery is not their fault. The Western tradition, the author despises, offers a superior analysis. Aristotle distinguished between energia, activity, and praxis, action toward an end, arguing that human flourishing, eudaimonia, requires the exercise of capacities toward excellent ends. The apprentice journeyman master ladder that built every cathedral and crafted every technology in Western civilization presupposed that vertical ascent through competence is not exploitation, but the meaning of human existence. The trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric was a vertical curriculum designed to cultivate vertical capacities. Natural law theory recognized that hierarchies of competence are embedded in the structure of reality. Some things are better than others. Some actions produce better outcomes. Some ways of living conduce to flourishing while others lead to misery. The author's horizontalism is a rebellion against logos itself, against the proposition that reality has a shape, that truth exists, that excellence matters.
It is, in the deepest sense, a spiritual disease masquerading as political critique. When Dr. Winona concludes that the only answer is to stop growing for them, she accidentally reveals the truth. Growth is the problem.
Excellence is the enemy. Competence is the target. The feminist project here unveiled is not the liberation of women, but the destruction of the standards that make civilization possible, and that make women's complaints about civilization possible. The writer types her article on a device created by vertical competence, transmits it through infrastructure built by male disposability, publishes it in institutions sustained by the surplus production of the order she denounces, and imagines herself a resistor rather than a parasite. Though criticism proves the threat line is the ultimate self-sealing move. Any objection confirms the theory. Any defense demonstrates guilt. Any appeal to logic or evidence is reframed as patriarchal violence. This is not argument but hypnosis, a trance state where reality is inverted and words mean whatever the theorist needs them to mean in the moment. Let us be unequivocal about the ontological theft occurring here. When Dr.
Winona calls productivity extraction, she is engaging in a classic Marxist inversion of natural law.
In the reality-based community, verticality is not violence. It is the great chain of being, the scala naturae where excellence is achieved through the arduous climb of the apprenticeship mastery ladder. To demand horizontalism, a flattening of competence, is to demand the heat death of the culture. It is entropy masquerading as ethics.
Winona claims that a woman running at 5 a.m. is a victim of gendered extraction, yet she conveniently ignores the telos of the act.
This is the empathy gap weaponized. Female discomfort is interpreted as systemic oppression, inflated meaning, while the male reality that 93% of workplace fatalities are men, that men die younger, that the glass cellar of dangerous labor is the true extraction protocol, is rendered invisible by gamma bias. You cannot have a civilization of horizontal loafers. You can only have a nest of parasites sustained by the vertical energy of men they simultaneously despise and require for survival. Consider the Sarah story, that trope of the exhausted doctoral candidate. The writer frames Sarah's stress fracture as a crime committed by the patriarchy. This is the apex of gynocentric infantilization. By stripping women of moral agency, claiming they are harvested by jogging apps, the writer reduces adult women to NPCs in a game played by invisible men. This is the status trap. Women are permanent moral patients, incapable of refusing the siren song of self-improvement. But we know the truth via the trivium. Logic dictates that if a woman chooses to run, she is the agent of that action. To say otherwise is to admit that women lack the sovereign will to govern their own bodies. A proposition so patronizing it would make a Victorian patriarch blush. The writer is not liberating women. She is forging a new chain of therapy speak, where logos is replaced by pathos, and the sanctity of individual achievement is sacrificed on the altar of collective mediocrity. You, however, are immunized against this contagion. You see the mechanical gears of the propaganda, the asymmetric satires, woman as victim, the identity-gated Noel-G, only the oppressed can speak, and the self-sealing immunity, disagreement proves your guilt. This essay was a bioweapon designed to induce learned helplessness, but you have donned the hazmat suit of reason. The violence of verticality is nothing more than the hatred of the incompetent for the competent, the resentment of the weak for the strong. Dogman knows that loyalty, sacrifice, and protection are virtues built on the violence of discipline, not the ease of horizontalism. You are now free from the spell. You know that the harvest is simply the price of existence, paid by men in blood and sweat, so that civilization may stand vertical against the encroaching dark. Go forth, build, run, and optimize, and let the critics rot in the flat, gray wasteland of their own making. And now the sponsored book introduction, Dogman, Loyalty, Sacrifice, and Protection. For 30 years, I've watched dogs cut through the nonsense humans drown in. My first German Shepherd, Kaiser, taught me more about respect in 1 week than 50 years of human interaction. He didn't care about my feelings when a trespasser jumped our fence. He reacted, he protected. That's the raw truth modern society tries to bleach out of existence. While keyboard warriors whine about toxic masculinity, my Dobermans have saved my family from 2 home invasions. Real protection doesn't apologize for existing. This book isn't for the weak-willed or the perpetually offended. It's for rational men who see the hypocrisy in a culture that mocks male strength while demanding protection. Dogs expose this lie daily. A pack doesn't vote on leadership, it follows the alpha period. In these pages, you'll find science, not sentiment. Learn why breeding matters in bloodlines don't lie, how testosterone shapes superior guardians in the testosterone advantage, and why discipline creates loyalty in obedience equals freedom. We dissect everything from genetic selection in legacy breeding to emergency tactics in crisis response protocols. If you're a man tired of being told to apologize for your instincts, this is your blueprint. Apply canine principles to command respect, shield your home, and build unbreakable loyalty. You'll see why female support amplifies male leadership in feminine force multipliers, and how nutrition fuels dominance in nutrition dominance, historical proof. Territorial imperatives shows how dogs thrived under warriors, not therapists. But if you believe gender is a social construct or that men should embrace vulnerability, stop reading now. Seriously. Go watch reality TV, knit a sweater. This material will offend you, and frankly, your confusion wastes my time for rational men. The proof is in the results. Train a dog with hesitation, and it disobeys. Lead with conviction, and it dies for you. Your choice. Keep drowning in double standards, or learn from creatures that never doubt their purpose. Dogman, Loyalty, Sacrifice, and Protection. Written by Conrad Riker, Buy now, links in description.